Hello, everyone. I am Dina Hadad, Vice Chair of Cost Action K-Peritia, accompanied today with Dr. Blazej, co-leader of Working Group 1. Together, we welcome you to another webinar in our Action Working Group 1 series of Conversation in Context.
This series that started earlier this academic year is a continuation of the Working Group theoretical endeavors, offering a space for critical and interdisciplinary conversations on cultural expertise and how it operates across legal, social, and institutional contexts.
We are very happy to welcome you to the second webinar of this year's series. In this webinar, we are joined by Dr. Cong-rui Qiao, Knowledge and Engagement Director at Law for Sustainability Solutions.
In her talk, titled The Role of Cultural Expertise in Evaluating Corporate Sustainability Impact in Europe, Dr. Cong-rui explores how cultural expertise can contribute to assessing corporate sustainability practices and broader questions of accountability in the European context.
We are delighted to have her with us for this webinar and to open up a discussion at the intersection of cultural expertise, sustainability, and corporate governance. So without any further ado, we'll hand over to Dr. Cong-rui's engaging insights. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Working Group 1 Theory webinar series for 2025-2026. This is the second session in our Conversations in Context series, where we explore emerging perspectives on law, sustainability, and social impact. Today's webinar is titled The Role of Cultural Expertise in Evaluating Corporate Sustainability Impact in Europe. We are honored to be joined by Dr. Cong-rui, Director of Knowledge and Engagement at Law Sustainability Solutions, whose work sits at the intersection of law, culture, and corporate responsibility. Dr. Cong-rui will guide us through how cultural expertise plays a critical role in shaping and evaluating sustainability strategies across diverse European contexts. Thank you for being here, and without any further ado, we will really give the floor to Dr. Cong-rui. Please.
Thank you very much, Dina. Could you confirm if you can already see my slides? Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Olivia and Dina, for this kind of introduction. And also thank you, everyone, for taking the time so I could share my work with you today. To kick things off, I'd like to invite everyone in our meeting room to grab either your mobile phone or tablet because we are going to have a little quiz. Once you have your mobile phone or tablet ready, you can either scan the QR code on your right or simply go to menti.com and type in the 8-digit password there. Yeah, I will give you more seconds so you could get ready. So once you see this page with meti.com on the top, then that means we are on the same page. Everyone ready? I hope so. If you do have any question as participants, drop either me or Dina a line. We can help you out. But let's assume everyone is ready. Something easy to start with. Now, please imagine yourself as a regular consumer based in wherever you are now. And now you would like to choose a sustainable product or service. What would matter the most to you? A, the product is environmentally friendly, or whether the employees involved in the making or delivery of this product to you are treated well. Whether it has a bigger impact on the society as a whole, or honestly, you don't really care. Okay, thank you for all your responses. I do notice we still lose a few responses. If it's due to the technical connection, drop us a line in the chat box. Yeah. Socially friendly is growing, appear to be the most popular choice among us. Okay, so you can see where you stand in our group who attend the discussion today. And just keep that answer or this ranking in mind. Now we are going to raise the bar a little bit higher. Now, please imagine yourself as a professional corporate impact rater, and now you have received corporate data on your office desk. Among all the following reports, what would you recognize as a positive impact indicator? 1, the company is making effort to safeguard the employees' right to association. 2, the company offers subsidized breakfast and lunch to the employees at the workplace. 3, the company offers training for the workers who have children on how to choose a proper school for their children. 4, the company organizes social events where their single employees could find a potential date. Freedom of association appears to be the top pick. Oh yeah, interesting. Workers who can receive some support from the companies to choose a proper school for their kids. Okay, thank you very much all for the inputs. I will stop here. And with all those information we have just gathered on the screen, I'd like to move to the substance of our event today. When we speak about corporate sustainable duties, it has a historical evolution. It's not a lecture on that, so I will just give you a nutshell version. Around the 1960s, the social responsibility, corporate social responsibility movement, or CSR for short, really obtained global momentum. And since then, companies across really the globe started to think about how to invest in the CSR initiatives. But pretty much for decades before the Corona period, the CSR is treated as a voluntary commitment of companies. It's something nice to have. It's not really something legally binding. But that has changed during Corona period. And the 2 legislations are the most well-known adopted in the EU. One is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which came to effect in 2023. And the next year, EU also had another directive on the corporate sustainability due diligence effective in 2024. And with these 2 regulations, corporate sustainable responsibilities are no longer something nice to have, but really legally binding. They have to comply with those regulations if they fulfill certain criteria, either in terms of their size or their revenue. So what does this evolving framework really mean for companies inside and also outside of EU? Well, we have referred to the WBA 2024 corporate impact rating that assessed 2,000 companies globally. And of course, I'm based in Amsterdam, so I looked into Dutch companies and also Chinese companies with which we work closely. And the conclusion can already tell you there are 40 Dutch companies assessed by this rating and 233 Chinese companies on the same rating list. Dutch companies are far ahead of their Chinese counterparts, surpassing the 60 scoring line out of 100. And Chinese companies, more than 230, they regularly rated pretty low, between 10 and 20 out of 100 scoring. And of course, we were intrigued by this, and then we selected a smaller sample to see what is going on within this ranking framework. And we selected 15 companies, large size, with quite considerable revenue globally, 5 headquartered in the Netherlands and 10 in China. And across each scoring category, namely human rights respect or protection, decent work, and ethical product, the selected Chinese companies are in each category much lower than their Dutch counterparts. And naturally, we have the question, okay, now we know the matrix, and now we have the detailed company annual reports, so we could compare what really went wrong. Is that a company performance issue, or it's something different, perhaps the assessment standards? The first factor we have identified very interesting is what we call conceptual differences. Under the EU directives, the most relevant instrument here is the European Sustainable Reporting Standards. And actually in this instrument itself, it claims we want to promote European values across the supply chain. And what do European values or views really mean? And if you look at around 100 data points required by these reporting standards, they, especially under the S pillar, have a very clear focus on individual rights protection. More specifically, 3 categories are here. One is on the labor representation, such as the freedom of association and independent trade union. And then you have equality rights, being equally employed or equally promoted in your workforce. And then you have the third category, work-related rights, which recognize, for instance, the right to privacy and the rights to complete and effective remedy. And all the ranking indicators are, of course, in alignment of those data points. They are nice recognition of important rights, and I think certain rights, they are not only valued within EU, but also, let's say, in China. But the problem really arises when we look at what is not included in this framework. I refer to the International Trade Organization report from 2023, where it shows actually, globally speaking, especially in the global south, major portion of employment is not in the formal, but in the informal employment sector. And the most, if you want a concrete number, that is around 2 billion. 2 billion people globally, they do not work for formal employees, meaning they don't have or have rather limited access to labor representation. And in the case of China, China formally abolished the planned economy in 1993, after which the labor force components have been changing rapidly. And by 2022, over 200 million Chinese workers are employed outside the formal workforce, meaning they also don't have effective access to labor representation. So in the absence of the organized labor representation in a lot of developing regions, China included, and also with the presence of quite ineffective national social security protection schemes, companies, in today's discussion, we look at Chinese companies are actually supposed and indeed also do fulfill the duty to provide not the protection of individual rights, but more substantive benefits to workers. In the little quiz we had, they were not hypothetical, providing subsidized, sometimes even free breakfast and lunch to the employees, and trying to advise employees how to choose a cost-efficient school for the kids, and even organize some meetup events. Say, hey, if you are single, you want to start a relationship, yeah, as a boss, I can help you with that. Those initiatives are actually quite common across different manufacturing sectors in China. It's more substantive benefits as opposed to any protection or recognition of individual rights. So the practices are real, but they are outside of the recognized European metrics. So how shall we deal with this gap? And we identify this as part of the economic difference. If you live in a different economy or society, you would have different expectations on your employer, on the companies that are active in your region. Here I have a very interesting example I have presented a few times because there's a very interesting coincidence. Two industry giants. One is the Switzerland-based Glencore, and one is the China-based also giant Huawei. In 2024, they both issued their sustainability report, 70-page long, but the similarity really ends there. And more interesting point is this. Yes, no scores, so you don't need to show your results, but I want to give you a few seconds so you could guess in the WBA 2024 ranking. Glencore and Huawei, out of 100, how many scores did they receive? 3, 2, 1. 80 versus 15. So of course, as researchers, we want to see not only the results, but also factors that lead to such different results. And if we look at the 70 report released by Glencore, they mentioned human rights alone 149 times. And that covers every reporting and therefore scoring category, including human rights due diligence, labor representation, and legal remedy if employees have any complaints. In contrast, the Huawei report, you could barely find the mention of human rights. Out of 70 pages, only 2 times. And other required data points, collective bargaining, independent trade union, 0. So of course, using the European standards, the Chinese report released by Huawei almost missed any potential scoring data point. But for us, the real question is the PER ranking on WBA or whatever ranking system you are using really the same thing as the PER performance of the company? And we assume it is not the case, and we need some more data to verify if our assumption is grounded. And then we look into the methods of the WBA rating methodology. And of course, not only this rating organization, a lot of even commercial ones, they claim to be inclusive, collecting and analyzing all the available data that are relevant to the performance and risks of the companies they want to assess. But in reality, it is really the dominance of English language data. And we already mentioned the family-friendly policies at manufacturing sectors in China, including free breakfast, educational advice. If you collect data using Chinese terms that are not recognized by the European metrics, and you also report in Chinese, it's quite likely that even the good practice that is locally valued is not recognized or worse, misunderstood. And we don't have time today, but a lot of tech companies which are thriving in China, they do invest in the so-called rural digitalization, investing in the infrastructure in the rural communities as part of the national plan to revitalize the Chinese rural area. But those practices, term-wise, language-wise, they are not really in the scope of the European rating agencies. And for the rating agencies, if they don't have availability of data that they can collect, they can understand, they would usually refer to this method called the mean estimate, meaning they will, if I don't have a report on you, then I will use an estimate to assess how risky you would be. But as we already see previously, that estimate is most of the time based on English language data. And the final contributor, or really a flaw that we have identified, is the methods. In China, the focus of today's discussion, the government-company relations are quite different from those, let's say, in Netherlands. Companies usually attend on a regular basis government policy briefings to make sure their strategies, their operational plans will be aligned with the national regulations and policy priorities. So we could see a lot of presence of companies at the government organized events, but shall that be read as a flag, indicating this company is risky or not? If we look at the labor data companies such as this one, it's not a criticism about this company. Actually, we have identified certain similar weaknesses, but just to give you a sense, in this supply chain risk tracker, this Chinese textile manufacturer based in Jiangsu province is flagged as high risk. And then the evidence supporting this assessment includes several Chinese news reports. And one report is about this company attending several times the policy briefings organized by the local anti-poverty authority, who is understood as a promoter or collaborator for the forced labor in rural China. But as the Chinese news reports shows, this is really an event where companies were informed of what kind of policy initiatives are in place they could apply for to have, for instance, capacity building or awareness raising among the new employees, potential employees from rural China. So when I look at this referenced evidence, I couldn't reach the conclusion this is an indicator this company is involved in forced labor. This is really about what kind of incentives you could apply for if you want to have new workers from rural areas. So to summarize the major contributors we have identified, conceptual, linguistic, standards, and methodological, all those biases or flaws are actually speaking about one thing. That is why we are here today, the lack or the neglect of cultural expertise in assessing corporate sustainable impacts. Here at FAIR ESG initiative, what we want to do is to rectify this. Apparently, we see this as a very critical challenge, not only to European raters, investors, you name it, but also to the suppliers they have to or they need to engage. So we want to still keep this framework. I think out of around 100 reporting data points recognized by the EU standards, most of them are pretty good, and I do believe this should be the goals of companies to reach. But certain missed points or certain misunderstood points needs to be rectified with culturally relevant KPIs. So we want to amend the European standards to make sure it's more inclusive, it's fairer to companies that may use different reporting metrics and even using some non-European languages. And in terms of methods, we are currently developing a few. And the general theory is the so-called appreciative engagement. So in nutshell summary, our approach is never to name and shame, but to engage and enable. And we have already delivered the first edition of the Corporate Impact Academy training in Beijing this summer. And the responses were quite positive. The companies who are already there at this academy, as well as their the companies they recommended our service to, they wanted to have us back actually in 2 weeks. So we are going to give the second edition of this Impact Academy to Chinese companies again in Beijing in October. And that is the one end of the whole spectrum. We want to promote what is valuable, what could make sense if you want to expand in the EU market. And we also engage stakeholders at the other end of the whole spectrum, that are the European renters and auditors. So now we have already entered the process of developing a pilot with a Netherlands-based auditing firm and potentially 5 big Chinese companies. So we want to use the European reporting framework, the assurance standards, but with some amendments from the culturally relevant KPIs. And then using this amended framework, the Dutch auditing firms will maintain its autonomy, do whatever it is supposed to do, and the Chinese companies will have a say before the auditing starts, what would be the good indicators to fairly reflect their operational reality. Just to conclude, I'd like to bring you back to a very nice visit. It's my first time. I saw this a few times in sci-fi, but it's my first time to be inside of a gigantic industrial site, almost without humans. That was the summer this year. We were visiting wind turbine manufacturer, a pretty big one, global top 3, their industrial site in Beijing. And after the visit, the director asked us, hey, Cong-rui, you are part of European experts. So can you tell us the top concern from our potential European partners? I said, okay, it's quite straightforward. To European, average European business partner, they always want to know whether you are high risky in terms of child labor and forced labor. And then this director says, okay, this is very easy to answer. I can already say no. I say, yeah, if you say no, you should provide data to substantiate your claim. And you say you have seen because we are free of forced labor because we are free of human labor. Just simply as simple as that. Yeah. So next steps, this is where I welcome your input, perhaps your potential collaboration. We have been developing this Fair Impact Academy, mainly targeting Chinese and a bit of South Africa business leaders. If wherever you are based now, you see similar problem where cultural expertise could help solve that problem, we are more than happy to expand the geopolitical scope of our academy. And this is input from a new contact in Nigeria. She told us that actually for big companies in Nigeria, they still treat corporate sustainable duties as the traditional corporate social responsibility, meaning companies can do business as usual. When they earn the money, they could invest some of their earning to philanthropy initiatives. But if you look at the EU regulation, we are not there yet. It's not just to give money for a good cause. It should be part of your governance policy and should be always inherent to your day-to-day operation. So I saw this as a great potential, but if you have other cases, data requests from your regions, I'm more than happy to learn. And another thing, I mentioned this already a bit with Livia over the summer. Back then, I was preparing the book proposal. And just last week, we received a yes from a quite a good publisher, Clover. They are very good at engaging corporate readership. That is our target readers. And we hope to conclude this book contract by the end of 2025. And the topic is basically what we are discussing and will be discussing today, compliance, corporate sustainable compliance from a comparative perspective. Of course, we will include the BRICS regions, China, Brazil, South Africa, and EU member states. We also want to include USA and the UK, given their economic and geopolitical importance. Yeah, so when the contract is concluded, we will open the call for book chapter contribution. If you have the passion, if you have the interest, just drop me a line and let's try to produce a very good book for the English readers, for the corporate leaders. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to your input.
Thank you, Dr. Cong-rui. Thanks a lot for such intriguing sort of presentation with all of this information and practical sort of insight into how cultural expertise could really make a huge difference in such a context, very much relevant to our up-to-date reality in corporate context and in context related also to human, non-human sort of elements. So what an amazing, what a fascinating sort of discussion put on table related to all we could really have in our today challenges with regard to development, corporate, and individual rights. Okay, we open the floor for questions.